So the Innovation Hub is an agency, an innovation agency of the Gauteng province. Institutionally, we are located under one of its agencies called the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, GGDA. We have a mandate to foster economic development and competitiveness of the Gauteng province through innovation. The organization focuses on three broad sectors of the green economy, the smart industries, and the bioeconomy. And recently, about 4 years ago, we established a program, a township program, that is simply the Innovation Hub located in townships. We run incubation programs in those three broad areas of focus. For the green economy is called the Climate Innovation Center South Africa. You'll find out why we called ourselves, we have that tag South Africa. The incubation program under the smart industries is called MAGZAM. The one under bioeconomy is called Biopark at Gauteng. And then the Ekati Labs program also run incubation, a number of incubation programs. So that we on the same page on what we mean by a green economy. Shannon, can we please go to the previous slide? Yeah, so I thought I should give you a bit of context on what we talk about when we talk about the green economy. And I thought I would do that by going back to when it became, it was initially used as a terminology in public discourse. The first mention of the green economy was about 30 years ago, just over 30 years ago. It made way in a public document. The UK government had commissioned a study. That study was meant to inform how they will address the issue of sustainable development. And somehow the terminology green economy made it to the title of that report, although the document itself did not describe or explain what the green economy is. So all it was in that report that you see on the slides was that blueprint on the green economy, but the contents of the report were referring to sustainable development. This terminology then gained momentum in 2008, post the global economic meltdown. And it was publicized by the UN, specifically the UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program. And it was first coined and described in one of its reports called Rethinking Economic Recovery, a Global Green Economy Deal. So next slide, Shannon, please. So as you would have gained from this bit of background, the green economy, therefore, is not a specific sector. It's a framework or a philosophy for growing an economy. So our economy currently is considered brown, and all governments around the world are putting a lot of effort into transitioning from the brown economy to a greener economy. So I think we need to have that at the back of our mind, that we are not talking about a specific sector. It's a lens through which we grow an economy. And therefore, you will see that it will be pervasive across almost all sectors of the economy. So if there's nothing you take away from today's seminar, just remember that when people talk about a green economy, they are not talking about a separate economy. They are talking about economy as we know it, but that economy has three distinct characteristics. And those are, we've given examples of what those are in those diagrams. So a green economy is defined differently by different actors within the ecosystem, but I think there is an agreement on these three aspects. That it's an economy that is based on low carbon energy sources. As you would know, South Africa is coal intensive, and coal is a fossil fuel, and therefore our proportion of low carbon fuel sources is very low in South Africa, except we have done relatively well in the past 10 years through our Renewable Energy Independent Power Procurement Program. It's a bit of a tongue twister, so I think for the purposes of this presentation, I'll call it REI4P. There are four Ps there. So for an economy to be considered a green or greener, it has to have a larger proportion of renewable energy sources, which are no carbon sources, as compared to your fossil fuels such as coal that are predominantly carbon-based. So that should be the first characteristic of what a green economy is. The second characteristic speaks to resource efficiency. And resource efficiency across the board, whether it's in the waste sector, whether it's in the water sector. But essentially it says that you put less, whatever the inputs are less, and you take more out of it. And I'll give examples of how that pans out using some of the companies that we support as the Innovation Hub. Then the third element of what a green economy talks to is about social inclusivity. And this component has led to many debates from labor opposing renewable energy programs, because I think we haven't in most developing countries been able to break it down as sufficiently enough for all the participants in our economy to understand. But the intention of that aspect of the green economy was about making sure that as we grow an economy, our economies, as it transitions from a browner economy to a greener economy, that people that are on the periphery, the marginalized, also get to benefit from that transition. That also includes people not losing their jobs. So it lends itself to labor disputes, but that's not the intention for which it was proposed. So those are the three elements of what a green economy is. It's not a separate economy. It has three characteristics. It has to be low carbon. It has to be powered by low carbon energy sources. It has to be resource efficient. It needs to make sure that people are tagged along. Next slide, Shannon, thank you. So as you would imagine, green technologies are therefore those technologies that enable the economy to transition to a greener economy. So all the technologies that we speak to, the ones that are low carbon, such as renewable energy technologies, some innovations in that space would be around renewable energy, solar PV, wind energy would be examples of technologies, green technologies. Technologies that are aimed at saving water, for instance, are considered green technologies. Waste beneficiation. So you'd see some of the pictures that we provided there are some of the companies that we support at the Innovation Hub. It's also applicable even in the construction sector, where there are alternative building materials using waste products. So all those technologies that speaks to resource efficiency, renewable energy, can all be classified as green technologies. So next slide, please, Shannon. So I thought I should just give a bit of a background. So now we understand where the green economy comes from, what it is and what it is not, and some of the technologies that can be identified as green technologies. So I think with this slide, the intention is just to show you that South Africa is intentional about transitioning to a greener economy. And there are a number of reasons why they are doing that. Of course, one of the largest economies in the continent. I suppose it depends on who you ask. If you ask a Nigerian, they might say they're actually the biggest economy. But for the purpose of the presentation, let's consider ourselves as the largest economy in the continent. And therefore, we need to lead by example. Not that we're playing any superiority role. It simply says if the continent is to transition to a greener economy, somebody has to take lead. And so that's why South Africa is putting a lot of effort and resources towards this transition. Of course, it's no brainer that about 70% of our economy are driven by coal. About 90% of electricity generation comes from coal, and therefore we are a carbon intense economy. We also very energy intensive, in that we use a lot more energy for one output, product output, or per GDP, and compared to most countries around the world. We're also a very natural resource dependent economy. Mining industry, agriculture industry, and those products or those materials are finite. And to ensure that we prolong their lifetime as much as possible, we need to ensure that we utilize those resources as efficiently as possible. Remember that resource efficiency is one of the definitions of a green economy. And of course, some of the biggest challenges that the country and the continent will face in the future are around providing services to the urban population. Think about more than 5 years ago, Africa reached the threshold of 50%. More than 50% of the population in Africa are now in urban cities. And there's a need for services, and there are some green technologies that can help address some of these challenges. So here I'm simply going to summarize that the country has done a lot to respond to the challenge, to the move to transition to a green economy. And this transition is very much linked to the climate change response that the country has put in place. So we're not transitioning for the sake of it, we're transitioning because there are environmental implications to staying as we are. And climate change is the one that most of us are aware of. And to that end, we as a country are a signatory to the Paris Agreement. We have prioritized the transition. As a country, we have dedicated one of our chapters of our National Development Plan, which is a national vision. If you haven't read the National Development Plan, all of us have a responsibility to read it, because we need to find ourselves in it. We all have a role to play. All these things that we want to see in the country can't just be implemented by one actor alone, which is government. All of us, academia, the private sector, students, have a serious role to play to contribute to this green economy transition. And of course, we have other challenges such as unemployment. COVID is not going to make things easier for us. And whilst there are huge challenges of job losses, there might actually be opportunities to exploit and to come up with some of these green technologies that could lead to job creation. So now that I've given you a sense of how the country is transitioning and why it's transitioning, I'd like us to then move to the case study. As I said, I will use our organization, the Innovation Hub, as a case study. I mentioned earlier that we focus on three broad sectors as the Innovation Hub. We focus on smart industries, and within smart industries, the focus is on ICT and advanced manufacturing. In the bioeconomy, we focus on health and agro-processing technologies. The green economy focuses on water and sanitation, clean energy, and waste management. I think it's important to note that the Innovation Hub is a science and technology park. We're actually located on a 60-hectare plot of land. We are the first science and technology park to be registered with the International Association of Science Parks. So we have an infrastructure there. We have companies that operate within the park, and the intention is to build an ecosystem. We are located next to we are actually sandwiched between the University of Pretoria and the CSIR, who were actually some of the founding members of the Innovation Hub in collaboration with the Gauteng province. So I also mentioned that about 4 years ago, we decided that it wasn't enough for us as an organization just to offer our services in Lani suburb of Lynnwood, Pretoria. and that our services are actually needed in townships. So we established a program called Ekasi Labs, which are really satellite offices of the innovation hubs in township. We try to offer as many of the services that we provide in Linwood at Ekasi Labs. We have 10 of them around the province, and we try to have some regional representativity. Gauteng is typically divided into 5 regions, and we have at least one Ekasi Lab in each of those regions. So the reason why we focus on these sectors under the Green Economy Unit, which I'm part of with the Innovation Hub, is because these have been recognized to have significant job creation potential. As far back as 2008, there are studies that were conducted to that effect. So I'll just tell you a bit about what we do broadly as the Innovation Hub, and we'll go straight into examples of how we support green technologies, which is, I think, maybe of interest to you. So we are one of the implementers of the green economy in Gauteng. There is a green economy strategy for the province, specific for the province, but we are mindful that as we are implementing the green economy strategy for the province, we are also contributing and contributing to the implementation of many other strategies and policy documents at a national level. And we do that through a number of ways, and I've listed some here. And one of the activities that started about 2 years ago that we are passionate about is to provide some market intelligence, and with a bias towards current and aspiring entrepreneurs. And these studies aim to try and point whoever wants to start a business in the clean energy, waste management, and water and sanitation to where the opportunities are. I would be very happy to share with you the Clean Energy Market Intelligence Report that we published last year, also the Water and Sanitation Market Intelligence Report. The Waste Intelligence Report is completed, but we're doing the final touches before it's published. So that's some of the work that you're doing. We are doing a second iteration of those reports that are simply going deeper into it. And later in the slides, I just go briefly into where these opportunities are in the clean market and water and sanitation along the various value chains of some of the technologies. As an organization and as a team, one of the critical roles that we play is that of thought leadership. So we write thought leadership pieces when we are called to present and just to give guidance on the sector. We're always ready to do that. We work in collaboration with some institution to promote waste exchange and circular economy imperatives of government. And one of our key activities is enabling small-scale embedded generation, focusing on photovoltaic, solar photovoltaic. And we work closely with municipalities to ensure that they are ready for whoever wants to roll out a small-scale solar projects in municipalities. And I have to keep emphasizing that we are doing this mostly in Gauteng, although we do work with partners outside the province. So our work around supporting entrepreneurs finds home in our enterprise development program, or incubation program for as another word. Our Green Enterprise Development Program is called the Climate Innovation Center South Africa. We were established in collaboration with the World Bank about 5 years ago. And the World Bank established other Climate Innovation Center with other partners in other countries. So there would be a Kenya Climate Innovation Center, for example. That's why we do have that tag as I mentioned earlier, Climate Innovation Center South Africa, because we were the only one in the country, and we still remain the only one in the country currently. There were 7. I think there is an effort to establish one in Nigeria, so there might be 8 soon. I mentioned our focus sectors. Other CICs focus on agriculture, agriculture aspect or sector has already been covered by one of our incubation programs at the Innovation Hub, so we do not focus on it within the Climate Innovation Center. One of our most enabling activity or support to date has come from the Development Bank of Southern Africa. About 3 years ago, they gave us 15 million funding, and this 15 million has been extremely catalytic. We are aware that one of the critical needs of entrepreneurs, although it's not the only one, is access to funding for product development. And that's what this fund, a very small component of the Green Fund, was able to help us achieve. We got 15 million, 9 million of that was dispersed as seed funding to our startups that we incubate. And they were able to leverage an additional 65 million out of the 9 million that we dispersed. And they have gone on to set up or implement projects, a multi-million type of projects. So we have been very grateful to the support of DBSA. And of course, the entire, although I did mention that we were established in collaboration with the World Bank, the entire funding of the Climate Innovation Center South Africa has been enabled by the Gauteng government. We were not able to attract funding from the World Bank because South Africa is a middle income country. So most of the support that we have received and our success can be attributed to the efforts of the Gauteng government. This next slide simply shows you the geographical spread of other CICs. We'll go straight into the companies that we support within the CIC. So we currently have, this is a bit dated, we just signed 3 more companies. So we have a portfolio of 47 countries. These are largely technology innovation companies, and about a quarter of these have IP registered in South Africa. So it's SAIP registered in other parts of the world actually, and not just in South Africa. So we're very proud of our portfolio. As you will see, 40% of these companies are solid waste management companies. For the longest time, we used to have energy companies making the largest proportion of our portfolio, but that has gone down. There are efforts now to increase the number of companies in the water and sanitation space. We categorize our incubation program into 2 phases, and I'll touch on it 2 slides later. But just to give you a sense, there are companies in what we call the factory and the core. So the companies in the factories have not yet commercialized, they haven't made their first sale, and therefore we helping them get to a point where they can service their first client or sell their first product. So we still have 81% of those companies in the factory stage. That factory stage takes about a year, and then we have about 20% of companies in the core, or what we call commercial. So the intention there is for those companies within that phase to scale. Our portfolio is split between the young, the youth, the under 35s and the over 35s, with slightly more people in over 35. And I think that's the trend that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot more people who have gone to work first, coming back to do some entrepreneurial work, activities once they've gained a bit of experience. Where we are falling short as an ecosystem, and that's reflected in our portfolio at the Innovation Hub and the CIC, is on women participation and ownership. Only 21 companies, which is a huge improvement. I think 4 years ago, only 10 women, or 10% of the women, 10% of the companies in our portfolio were owned by women. The intention is to ensure that we put a lot of effort into attracting female entrepreneurs. And of course, we government, so we need to track the demographics around race. This picture was totally different 4 years ago. We had a lot more white people in our portfolio, but now it's relatively balanced. So I did say that we are Gauteng based. You'll see that in terms of our geographical spread, the bulk of our companies are located in Gauteng, but we do have a representation even in your province. We have some of our best companies are located in the Eastern Cape. And we're very proud of them. If we get enough time to discuss them, we will do so later. But I thought I should just also give you a sense of how we work. So how we incubate and how we find and attract these companies, right? We have a set and established incubation process. The first one is, of course, to identify and select these companies. We do that through a number of avenues. We host competition, there are pitching sessions, there are walk-ins, but whoever walks in still has to go present and pitch their idea, inverted commas, because we only take companies at technology readiness level 4 to 5. So a company with a prototype, a ready prototype, because we don't have enough funding to go way back to where the universities are operating. And of course, it's not our mandate. It sits in the portfolios of university and research institutions. And once we have identified those companies, we do some needs assessment. We identify what kind of IP arrangements that the technology or the service that the company offers would be suitable for those companies. And of course, we understand that the technology development stage, who is behind it, and helping them get a business case in place. And yeah, those early stage needs we identify. What we then do is we first allocate a portfolio manager. And what we have done in the Climate Innovation Center is we've segmented the personnel, the staff, into sectors. So there will be, there are colleagues that are just focusing on water, or largely on water and sanitation. So if we get a company that has a water and sanitation technology, we assign our colleague as a portfolio manager, and we work with a panel of mentors that we appoint once a year. And we then assign a panel of mentor. We assign a mentor who works alongside with the portfolio manager and the business to work through some of the needs that have been identified. And if we find that they need appropriate training or specific training, that company will be trained. However, there are those training that are generic, that are offered across the board. Branding, marketing are offered to all the entrepreneurs. And of course, we make sure that our companies are widely networked within the industry. We connect them with government agencies, municipalities, the private sector. And we do have a very small pocket of funding that we get from our partners, which allows us to give to our companies a seed funding, but it's extremely competitive. So companies that are incubated within the Innovation Hub, I forgot to mention that the entire organization supports over 500 companies, get to compete for a pot of 10 million, which is not much. So it's just funding that enables the company to go to the next stage. So in terms of implementing the vision, I mentioned earlier that there are 2 phases to our incubation program, the factory and the core. And the outcomes for the factory is that the company ought to have finalized their business plan. They have to have commercially piloted their technology, and they need to be legally compliant. And you only exit out of that phase once you have made at least one sale or service to your first client. So, and then you then move to a core program. The focus is on sales and on financial sustainability and making sure that the team is dynamic, it's well-rounded, and we then focus on growth at that stage. This is simply a depiction of an incubation process, factory, and we do stay in touch with the companies that have graduated from our incubation program. As you can see, it's a very lengthy process, up to 4 years. We do have companies that have been there for longer than 4 years, but that's by and large how long these companies can stay in the incubation program. Not everybody stays. If companies are not making progress, they sign a contract. If they breach, we exit them. We have exited a number of companies. So this is a summary of our value proposition. There are 4 elements to it, then broken down into a number of activities. There's access to advisory and skills development, access to market, access to infrastructure, and access to funding opportunities. So I'll give you an example. Under access to advisory and skills development support, we have intellectual property management and legal advisory support, business case development, business and technical training. Under access to market, we assist with market analysis as an example, networking opportunities. For infrastructure, we have hot desking space, we have Wi-Fi, we do have manufacturing space in the bioeconomy space, in the bioeconomy sector, and we are currently developing a business case for the establishment of a manufacturing and a product development infrastructure for companies in the green and smart industries. And I also mentioned the issue around access to funding opportunities. So just to give you a sense of what you focus on and where the opportunities are for our waste sector, as a country, we, I think, dispose about 90% of our waste. And I think the statistic goes that we dump 17 billion worth of value into our landfills annually. That's a sobering stat. And you can just simply imagine how many opportunities are there to beneficiate some of these waste streams that end up in landfill. But there are serious challenges around accessing some of this waste stream. They are legislative related, and those are some of the things that we are working with in the background. So that pie chart there simply gives you a breakdown of the waste. But yeah, right now the waste sector does employ a lot of people, but there are opportunities to even employ a lot more people. 17 billion rands is a lot of money of untapped value that we throw in like we literally throw away in our landfill. So if you are a young person looking for opportunities to innovate, that's one of the sectors that I would really, that will highly recommend that you tap into. We've then given you examples of people, and we try to make sure that we showcase some of the companies in your region. Dnf Waste is a recycling company, very big establishment in East London. I think they are on 1 hectare of land. They have a buyback center. And what we are incubating this company for is for the beneficiation of glass, specifically on beer glass that goes to waste, the bottles that break. What they do with the product is to make alternative decorative products. For instance, more affordable countertops and tombstones. And they also use it for decorative purposes. Doesn't have an IP, but it's a really innovative technology. In the energy space, we have companies that we have opportunities in renewable energy. There are lots of energy efficiency opportunities that people can tap into. So our companies are exploiting these opportunities. I listed them here so that should you want to go into this space, you can find yourself, you can identify where these opportunities are. I mentioned the small-scale solar projects initially. For them to really be implemented at a large scale, you need municipal bylaws that are friendly to their uptake. So those are some of the things that are needed in the industry to make that a reality, to make the rollout of some of these energy technologies a reality. We also gave an example of this company. It has developed a MISA technology. It's one of our companies in the energy sector, in fact, transport. But we classify it as energy because it's about saving energy or petrol or fuel in vehicles. They have focused on trucks, and their technology is a regenerative braking and engine optimization technology, and it's able to save up to 40% of fuel. They already have lots of orders. This company, it took 15 years to develop this technology to this point. And as you see, the IP has been granted in a number of countries, including USA, UK, China, Japan. So it's one of those companies that we're very proud of. There are many opportunities in the water space, also around water leakages. South Africa is a semi-arid country, yet the municipalities lose about 40% of their water to leakages. So there are huge opportunities there to develop technologies, and there are technologies already, but there is still a huge scope to develop even more innovative technology to address that issue. We do have companies. This one solves a Gauteng unique problem of acid mine drainage, but has a huge export potential to countries that have big mining operations. I'm about to finish, but before I close, I thought I should put two slides that come out of those market intelligence reports that I mentioned earlier. And in those reports, we looked at the size of the opportunities and the potential jobs that could be created by 2025 for those 4 sectors of solar PV, bioenergy, technologies, not sectors, solar PV, bioenergy, hydropower, including energy efficiency and demand-side management type of technologies. And there we outline the investment potential and how to exploit them across the value chain. So I think it's for you to read. We will share the report where I presented the same for water and sanitation in terms of water leakages, how much municipalities are spending, and where the smaller companies, the SMMEs, can exploit opportunities.